Hey everyone, it's Nina. I'm going to talk about the right angle cross of consciousness in today's video. This is very specific because there are many incarnation crosses, but this is my incarnation cross, so I'm going to speak about it. It is mostly about experience, which only makes sense. I'm sharing this with you guys in all of my human design videos as well. But if you're not familiar with the incarnation cross and you're not sure which one you have, you can look it up on any body graph site for free. So the incarnation cross, just to give a quick background, some people call it like your purpose or your divine path in this lifetime, and it can be those things for you. It's more so like a potentiality of your purpose when you are following your strategy and authority and you are in alignment with yourself. And so it's not actually something that you can try to force or make happen either. The mind will always try to do that, but it's actually something that you just naturally fall into and just happens when you are living your life in alignment. And so it's something more that you can observe and you don't necessarily have to do anything about. You actually don't even really need to do or know anything about it, because if you're following your strategy and authority, it's just something that naturally happens and occurs. And there are, the shadow aspects of it, and then like the really positive or seemingly positive aspects of it when you are living in alignment. So I'm going to go a little bit more into detail on that, and also go into more detail about how I experience this incarnation cross based on my previous experience and just my reflections on it. So I am on the right angle cross of consciousness too. So this is with me having a personality sun in 35, and my personality earth is 5. And my unconscious sun is 63, and my unconscious earth is 64, and I'm a 4/6 profile. So with that being said, I'm on the roof right now. I have just finally made my way a little bit more comfortably onto the roof after a very tumultuous last few years, and I'm very comfortable up here, and I'm kind of really starting to make a little bit more sense of what has happened in the first 30-something years in my life. And it makes sense with this cross because it's all about experience and going through experiences and making sense from it and then improving upon those experiences. So there are 4 different potentialities with this incarnation cross, and since I'm on the second one, my cross pertains more to like been there, done that, having experience to have it, and then knowing when I've gathered as much like information or knowledge from that experience and walking away from it, and then also kind of building on that and improving on it and making it better to continue to expand the consciousness of the people around me and everyone else in the world. It's the right angle cross of consciousness. So we are here to have an impact on that consciousness, especially as a manifestor. That is definitely something that is, I don't want to say my calling, but something that I naturally do or have the potential to do when I am in alignment. So a fun fact, some people that are on this incarnation cross is or was Walt Disney and Freddy, Mercury, and I believe Anderson Cooper is on this cross as well. So they weren't, I don't believe they were on the right angle cross of consciousness too, but they were on this actual incarnation cross. So it's interesting to look and see how those people operated and how they brought things into the world, because you have that 35 that's bringing this like hunger to feel full and fulfilled through experiences, and you have that fifth gate that is kind of like waiting for that right timing to execute what is within you and like what is the correct experience for you to enter into based on your authority. And then you have gate 63, which has the potential to like the detriment of doubting yourself. But the really beautiful aspect of this is it's very logical, and it's all about gathering facts and information and being able to solve things in more of like a logical manner. And then you have the 64, which is kind of like seemingly the opposite because it's the abstract versus the one, which is very logical. And gate 64 is about the confusion and finding peace or like clarity through that by going through the confusion and being able to imagine like all these new things and being birthed out of that confusion and also that doubt in gate 60. So it's actually, it can feel very conflicting. Like I experience a lot of conflict when I'm kind of in the detriment or the shadow aspect, because if I am doubting myself, I'm trying to solve all of my problems with that logical and abstract thinking of trying to make sense of the confusion, and then pointing all of those doubting questions towards myself. And then I'm going to have a very uncomfortable, not so fun experience. And so I'm not going to be naturally living out my cross. So with this specific cross, it isn't about figuring out and finding solutions for my problems. It's doing this for the collective and for other people. So finding logical solutions with my Incarnation Cross too, finding that logical answer by asking the correct questions. And so that's actually a really big strength in this specific cross, is you're really learning how to, over time, how to ask the correct questions. And based on your own experiences that you go through, you have deeply embodied that experience. So we naturally attract other people who have gone through similar experiences or are going through those experiences. And we have the opportunity, when we feel it is the correct moment, based on our strategy and our authority and even our type, especially as a manifestor, in a quadrite, I can feel out the room, and I'm naturally gravitating towards people who have gone through something similar or are going through something that I have already gone through. And the way that I speak, I say, yeah, I've gone through something like this, and this is how I handle the situation. And it's never this is how you should do it, it's the only way. It's more of I've gone through this and I've lived through this, and there's actually hope, and this was a solution that got me out to the other end. And so it allows the other person to be affected by my own experience in order to expand their consciousness and be able to move them forward, and not just through my words, but through the frequency and energy of my being and my experiences that I am transmitting to the person that I am actually speaking to. So this is a really interesting cross because we are really affecting other people through the experiences that we have. And so I'm a 4/6, and so based on your profile line, you're always going to experience this a little bit different, have a little bit of flavor to this Incarnation Cross. But as a 4/6, it's actually pretty hilarious when you think about it. I mean, there can be a lot of not self stuff going on. I mean, Ra really talks about how as a 6th line, the first third of our lives, and as a 4th line, we're just constantly pulling people into our experiences and saying, hey, let's go do this. Let's go jump off a cliff and parachute here and go do this, because our end goal is to expand the consciousness and affect the consciousness of everyone around us by bringing them into our experiences, which is how we expand our own consciousness and we learn and we grow. And so as a 4th line, we're going to pull people into those experiences and people in our network. And the problem with that is, as a 4/6 is, the first third of our lives, when we're in that 3rd line phase, we're not going to have the correct network. We're not going to be having the correct influence on the correct people. And so we're going to be dragging all of these people into our experiences if we don't have that awareness. And so that's kind of the detriment of it, which I look back and I'm holy shit, how many things was I convincing my entire network to go do with me that they were probably not even had no desire to do. And I was bringing them into these experiences and they might have traumatized them. But that is something to be actually very aware of, especially now that I'm, on the roof phase as a 6th line. I can go look back and reflect on that. My entire network has completely changed just within the last year, the last few months, and I'm being much more intentional with the relationships and the people that I am bringing into my life and that I'm attracting into my life. And so when I do enter in experiences, it's more of I'm going to have this myself and I'm going to reflect on it. And then as a 4th line, I can choose to share with the people in my network and the people that I feel energetically aligned with, and that following my authority, my emotional authority, and it feels right for me to share what my experience is, then I can bring them into this experience or recommend it based on my own experience, and be more intentional about what my recommendations are and how I lead people to expand their consciousness. So that's actually like really incredibly important to have that awareness about yourself while you're on this, or when you have this actual cross, because you are impacting so many people all the time based on your experiences and how you are sharing those experiences and how you're reflecting on those experiences, because we have the potential to sort through like so many different like possibilities having that 64 in this incarnation cross, because we're going into the confusion, but then Gene Keys, it talks about going from the shadow of confusion into the gift of imagination. And when we're able to remove ourselves and become the observer of the confusion instead of getting caught up and lost in it, then it is such a gift of being able to play and just have fun with the possibilities of what is coming up, and saying like, okay, like, what are we going to do with the potentialities of this outcome, instead of getting stuck on something that like might bring us down. And so and then you also have that flavor of the sixth one coming in, asking those questions that are saying, hey, like, what is the purpose of this? Like, I need to know the background of this. I need to get the facts about this in order to be able to develop some sort of logical solution. So we are kind of like, being on this cross, we're kind of like the problem solvers. We are the solutions guy. Like we are the people who are here to provide solutions to the collective and to people who come across our path, because we have this innate ability to do that. And when we're operating in that gift and not necessarily in that shadow state, and when we're not trying to solve all of our problems, because that's a very, very big detriment and shadow aspect of this particular cross, incarnation cross. And the other aspect of it is obviously the 35 and the fifth gate as well. So with the combination of all of this, the way I kind of look at it is it's like not necessarily linear, but for me personally, on the right angle cross of consciousness too, I have this, say I have an experience and I'm like, wow, I really want to enter into this, but I have that 5.4 in my conscious earth. And so that's really there to kind of ground me and keep me in check, to say, no, I'm waiting for the right moment. I'm waiting for the right moment. So I'm kind of like the hunter in that sense, where I'm just kind of like sitting there in the brush and I'm like waiting to see when is the right time to jump into this experience and like, figure this out. And especially as like an emotional authority, this is something like waiting out my emotional waves as well before I enter into an experience and jump into it. And I don't have a defined spleen either. So depending on different aspects of your chart, like for me, there is a lot of waiting. And that was not something I understood when I was younger, and I would just like go head on into these experiences. And I would be like, I'm going on an adventure. And like, there was still a part of me that naturally like would be like, feel this out if this felt right or not. I do have feeling cognition, so I think that actually really saved me from doing a lot of really stupid things, because I would feel things out and I'd be like, this doesn't feel right or something's off. And then also being obviously a quad right as well, like kind of subtly picking up on a lot of things. And even though I didn't necessarily understand it, it was kind of like really saving me a lot in a lot of situations. But just being hyper aware of that, especially with the fifth gate in this cross, is like, it's there to kind of protect you in a sense from entering into experiences that you're not aligned with. And I believe as I get older, the adventure or the need for the hunger to have or enter an experience externally like has greatly reduced versus when I was younger and when I was in the first phase of my sixth line experience. I wanted to do everything. I wanted to travel. I wanted to go out and do all these things. And now that I'm on the roof, I'm much more introspective. I'm much more intentional. And it came to the point probably like around the age 33, 34, where I was like, things were just really shifting and I was really resisting it. And I didn't have that hunger to travel. I didn't really want to. And when I traveled across Mexico last year for 4 or 5 months, like I didn't really want to be there because I was just kind of done with seeking out external like scenarios or experiences in order to fulfill this hunger within me that I just could never satisfy. And that's what the detriment or the shadow of the 35th gate or gene key can do to you, is, and if you don't have that awareness. And so, you know, as a 6th line coming up onto the roof, I realized that hunger that was not being satisfied was something that I needed to look at internally. So a lot of my so-called adventures are honestly just me going inward and operating on that plane right now versus seeking out external adventures. I go into myself and say, oh, I'm feeling this. What does this mean? Let's explore this. And then I kind of go into that and I explore that and I learn from that and then I share from it. So a lot of like, you know, somatic therapy or like, you know, healing modalities or just anything related with consciousness, quite honestly, to expand your consciousness. That's something that I have found that is much more interesting and that I'm naturally, I have naturally like just moved into from moving external to internal. And it's not good or bad or anything. It's just my personal experience. And so I think as you get older, you know, you're going to find that shifts over time if you are aware that you are operating from that shadow frequency of the 35th gate of like the hunger of trying to go into an experience and making it a mental experience. And so that is kind of like this, but there is kind of like this seemingly like conflict with this cross too, because you have this hunger to go into experiences, and then you have the confusion of the gate 64, and then you have the logical side, and then you have the 5th gate that's like, wait, don't go yet. We need to wait, and we need to like wait for the right moment and to be able to act on this experience. And so it's like you're kind of sorting through all of this and trying to find that balance within yourself. And the way that I have found for me personally is, you know, I want to go and say I want to go into an experience. And I'm like, wow, I really want to go into this. I say, okay, I need to wait through my emotional wave, or I need to, you know, tap into my authority. Maybe it's splenic for somebody and they get a hit and they're like, yeah, this is it in the moment. I want to go do this. And so I go into that experience, and when the experience is done, I just know I'm finished with it. And so after that, my 64th gate steps in, and it's like, wow, maybe the ending of that experience didn't make sense, but I'm going to try to make sense of it. And especially like I have the full channel, the 64 or 47 from the head to the ajna. You know, sometimes it takes time for me to find clarity, you know, from my experiences to make sense of, you know, what I really went through. And then, you know, I have the 60 that tries to kind of bump in and make sense of things and can create doubt about like, oh, was this the right experience that I went to? And then that's when the not self comes in, and you're trying to solve your own problems and you're trying to figure out things. And so this is more of like living in your experience and then reflecting on them and being the observer of them without being attached to the story of what you had. And the actual beauty of this Incarnation Cross, and Walt really talks about this, is that, you know, we go through the experience and then it's almost like when we're done with it, we get to look back in the rear view mirror. And so what we're sharing might be a little bit distorted, especially if you have that 64-47 channel, because we tend to reflect on things and not have like the full truth of the past, which is a whole nother video that I could do about that specific channel. But we tend to look back on our experiences with a much more positive slant than when we were going through them. So the actual gift of this for us personally is the ability to look back on our experience and be like, wow, that really wasn't so bad. And then because of that, we can share that with other people and be like, listen, I went through this, and, you know, this is how I went, you know, survived it, or this is how I solved this problem. And you actually help them because your view of the past is a little bit distorted, and it's kind of like a win-win for everyone, because you feel good about your past, even though it felt really tumultuous in the moment, potentially, you know, you still reflect back on that with grace and looking at it as like, oh, this was a learned experience, if that's how you're choosing to perceive it. So the final things about this Incarnation Cross is basically we're just here to make sense of our experiences and to share them with the world and to have some sort of impact in the world and the actual consciousness of the world, whether it's, you know, the people that we're interacting with. So depending on your profile as a 4th line, I'm going to have the most impact on my actual network, and I'm going to draw them in, and I'm going to share my experiences with them. So like, it only makes sense, especially as a manifestor, I feel like initiated to, or I have this urge to share. I have that 1222 and the 3536 to share my experiences when I'm in the right mood, and to make sense of everything that I'm going through as a fourth line, and to like say, hey, I've gone through this, and look what I've done, and I've survived, and you can too. And so the right people will come to me, and they will see this, that are in my network or that connect with me, and they're going to see it, and then it's going to impact them in some way to expand their consciousness. And so this is something that, you know, you can take a look at your chart, and you can kind of see like, oh, this actually makes sense for me to actually solve problems and to help other people. And I say solve problems in the sense that like you're here to be that problem solver with that very logical gate. And for me personally, like, you know, my job, or like my career, is actually consulting for nonprofits. So I come in and I implement systems for these nonprofits, and I say, this isn't working. And based on my previous experience with the multitude of different companies that I've worked with, I can say, okay, this is what has worked in the past, this is what has not worked in the past. And then when I do project management as well, it's like I can work with different people on the different teams and say, okay, this is where the problem is, and I can look at that, ask the correct questions in order to guide them, the person that I'm working with, to a correct solution that's going to make things more efficient and to make them better, and do things differently than that were done before. And in doing so, it is an expansion of the consciousness. It is an expansion of growth and moving things forward. And so just kind of look at your life and see where you might be operating from this. I actually didn't really have an awareness of this like superpower or gift of mine until later on. And so when you start to realize you might be operating in the shadow aspect, you can move into the actual gift of these specific gates, and you can say, oh, okay, where can I actually move from that confusion and actually surrender the need for control of having to know anything, and just bask in the imagination and like explore that, and just know and trust that the correct solutions will come to me while, you know, having this experience and being able to reflect on it later. And so when you start to understand different aspects of not just your incarnation cross, but your cross in general, but I mean, these are pretty big because, you know, your sun and your moon make up, or your sun and your earth make up about 70% of who you are. And so when you start to just become hyper aware and you expand that self, like you have that self-awareness and you start to expand that, you can start to become more aligned while you are in alignment with your strategy and your authority, because that is key to aligning with your incarnation cross. So I believe that's all that I have to talk about today. And I hope that anyone who is on this incarnation cross has found it helpful, and maybe your spouse or your friend or somebody else that you know or love is on this incarnation cross. I hope that this is helpful in to see how these people operate and why we do the things that we do. It's like there's a reason why we operate this way. And like I said, there are the shadow aspects of it, so you can see when someone's operating from the not self or the shadow, but you can also see the potentialities of like, wow, this person is really here to make an impact and to really move the collective forward in a way, and to do things differently than has been done before. We are here to be the problem solvers in a multitude of different ways, and we're very imaginative, and you know, we're really good at asking questions in order to shift and move things forward and provide a different perspective. And we do that by having our own experiences. So I think that's what's really amazing about being on this incarnation cross, is like we truly get to live life in like such a multitude of different ways. And it's really, really exciting, because even though sometimes it might be tumultuous or we go through these experiences, it's like we can reflect on it, and we have like the potentiality to really impact so many people around us by living in alignment with ourselves, and you know, sharing this with the right people who need to hear this so that they can progress and move forward and expand their consciousness, which just is like this ripple effect that goes out to everybody. So All right, I think that's it. I'm gonna stop there. I hope you guys enjoyed this video. Leave a comment below if you connect with this, or if you have this Incarnation Cross, or if you have any questions. As always, if you are interested in learning more about human design or your Incarnation Cross, feel free to go to my website. You can see where I have one-on-one coaching and blueprints and all of the things. So thank you guys so much for watching, and I will see you in more videos. Bye.